Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about people that are a first-time buyer with a car, or they just don't have any credit history, so they're also a first-time buyer. But I'm going to get into these two situations, and what I mean by a first-time buyer is someone that has credit but has never had an auto loan before, and then obviously talking about people that just don't have any credit history at all. And I'll first answer the question of if you can get a loan. Yes, you can get an auto loan, and I'll kind of give my advice on all of that throughout the video. But in the first part, I'm going to talk about people that have no credit history at all and kind of that whole situation. And then in the second part, I'm going to talk about people that do have credit history, but they've never had an auto loan. And then we're going to wrap things up with any leftover parts or tips and advice that kind of can go over both parties. So let's get into the video. A quick disclaimer is there's a lot of things that are super similar between a first-time car buyer and a ghost. And so there's some things that I'm going to kind of meld together at the end of this video. So in this part, I'm basically just going to describe what a ghost is and a lot of stipulations that will kind of apply to them when they are getting a loan, just someone who has no credit history. So first off, a ghost, like I said, is someone who has no credit history at all. And that's what lenders and dealerships will call it, is a ghost, because you don't exist, right, from a credit standpoint. And it's a negative thing from the sense that they have nothing to base you off of, so they don't know if they can trust you for a loan. It's a positive thing because you haven't had a chance to screw up yet on a credit standpoint, so you don't have any negative things going against you. That being said, though, there are a ton of stipulations from lenders for ghosts typically. Now, what it usually is the car has to be a new enough vehicle. That's one of the stipulations for most lenders. I had lenders that would maybe go out to 10 years. Some lenders would only go out to 7 years old. Some would do 5. Some would only do 3 years old. So just depending on the particular lender, they're always going to set a range. And the reason they're doing that is they're thinking that if you buy a newer car, the chances of something breaking down on it are going to be less. So then you're going to make your car payment because you're not going to not make your car payment because you have to fix your car and all that kind of stuff, right? They look at that, right? The next thing is mileage. Lenders will typically have mileage restrictions for people that have no credit when they are getting their first auto loan. Usually they want it to be under 100,000 miles at least. Some lenders are even stricter where they're like, you can't have above 40,000 miles. I've seen it. So just figure out that program with the particular lender as well, and understand that you're going to have to buy a newer car that's lower miles, which sounds nice, but the next part kind of makes things difficult. They have money restrictions on it. And the first one is going to be pretty obvious. It's just based on your income. Most lenders, again, it varies lender to lender, will have a percentage based that they will loan you out in terms of a monthly obligation or a monthly payment on your income. So some lenders will only do 5%, some will go up to 10%, some will even go up to 15% of your monthly income. And this is gross monthly income, by the way, in terms of a car payment. Now, that means that if you, for example, only make $1,000 a month, well, just take, let's say, 10% of $1,000 a month. That means you can only afford a $100 a month car payment. Or if they go up to 15%, you can only afford a $150 a month car payment. So understand that if your income is extremely low, it can be pretty difficult to just get an auto loan, because it's hard to find cars that have a payment that is that low that fall under all the other criteria. And then the next thing is just going to be the actual money amount. Now, sometimes there are circumstances where if someone has a really high income and they've got a lot of money down, lenders will kind of be flexible. But for the most part, they don't want to loan you out more than $15,000. And a lot of lenders, it'll be even less than that. When I was a first-time buyer, now this is going to be more in the second section because I did have some credit history, I was able to get a loan of about $15,000 for my first auto loan. And that's what I've seen typically be the top for most people that have absolutely no credit history at all. Most of them will be even less. It'll be $10,000 to $12,000, and some of them, they won't even go above $6,000 for an auto loan. So you can see how that can make things extremely difficult for you for finding a car, because you're like, okay, I have to find a car that is new enough, has low enough miles, and it's inexpensive enough that I can get a loan on it, and it can basically dwindle down your options to a very select amount of cars. So it can make things difficult if you have no credit history. So those are typically the stipulations for a ghost. And then obviously the last thing is some lenders will require money down, and this can vary lender to lender. Some of them, they'll say you don't need any money down. Some of them say you need 20% down. It just depends on the particular lender. So understand that you might have to come with money out of pocket to get the auto loan. Now, this next section is going to be on people that are first-time car buyers. And what I mean is someone that has never had an auto loan before. However, they do have credit history. And there's a very wide spectrum of people that fall under this category, starting from someone in my situation years in the past where I had a bunch of credit cards that I had used, or I shouldn't say a bunch, I had one credit card that I had used every single month. So I actually had a really high credit score, but my credit history was very thin. And so I still had a credit score when I got my auto loan, but because when I got my first auto loan, I was considered a first-time buyer, I had a limit on that auto loan. The maximum amount they would loan me out was $15,000. And I needed to actually find a car that was less than 100,000 miles. They didn't give me a year restriction. The lender that I went through at that time didn't have a year restriction, which I thought was pretty cool. So I ended up getting a little bit of an older car. But yeah, there definitely are restrictions for first-time buyers, but it depends on the situation. So the first situation is someone who has never had an auto loan, obviously, and that's going to be all these people, but who has really bad credit. This is the hardest probably in terms of a just credit approval situation to get done because one, you haven't proven to a lender that you can make payments on a car. And then two, you have proven to a lender that you're not good at making payments on other things. And so from their viewpoint, they don't really want to loan you out money because then they go, this person's high at risk. They're going to default on their car payment. We're going to have to repo it. We're possibly going to lose money, all that kind of stuff, right? That's what they're thinking. And so that's kind of like the first part of the spectrum is people that have bad credit. If you're in this spectrum where you never have had an auto loan and you have bad credit history, prepare for a couple things. Typically, you will need to come with a lot of proof of income just to get approved on something like this. Money down is definitely going to be a thing, and potentially you're going to need to have a co-signer as well that actually has good credit just so that you can get approved for an auto loan. And the restrictions are going to be super strict. Typically, people that are like this, they will make it so that it's a very strict money amount, mileage amount, year for the car, all that kind of stuff, like everything that I talked about in the first part of the video, but kind of even stricter. Then the next tier is, like I said, what I was, where I never had basically an auto loan, but I had good credit. And in this situation, you have a pretty good chance of getting approved by yourself, but typically you're still going to have to bring proof of income when you try to get approved for the auto loan. Money down is not necessarily going to be 100%, but typically they'll still want some form of money down. It just won't be as much as someone with bad credit. And the nice thing is you can actually get a pretty good interest rate. So my first interest rate ever on an auto loan was 3.49% for 60 months, which, I mean, for someone who's never had an auto loan before, that's a really good interest rate. So if you actually are smart and build up your credit history, even if you don't have a mortgage or an auto loan to build it, you can still have a chance of getting a pretty low interest rate if you're smart about things. So that's kind of like that part of the spectrum. You're still going to be pretty limited in terms of how much money you can get loaned out to you. It's still probably going to be in that same first-time buyers area where they'll probably only loan you up to $15,000. So just kind of understand that. And yeah, pretty simple there. Now the next step is someone who has credit history, has never had an auto loan, but they have like a pretty deep credit history. And this is typically someone who has multiple credit cards. They have a mortgage, which, believe it or not, there's a lot of people out there actually that have a mortgage, but they've never had an auto loan. I saw it happen all the time. And this is a very interesting first-time buyer because they are a first-time buyer, but they're not at the same time. And so sometimes lenders will be a little bit more lax with these situations, especially if you have a good credit score, and they will allow you to take out a bigger loan than they normally would for a first-time buyer. I had a situation where I had a customer come in that, I mean, income was good, credit was good, and they had a mortgage, but they never had an auto loan. And we were able to get them approved for a $50,000 vehicle because everything matched up, even though they had never had an auto loan before in the past. And this was just because the lender looked at it from, okay, this person has a steady job with steady income and they're paying on this mortgage. They've never missed a payment there, right? They look at all that kind of stuff and they go, okay, this person's chance of missing a car payment is going to be very low. So we're okay with loaning them out more money. We understand why they're trying to take that step in their life. And I guess that'll lead into the next part of the video. I want to talk about things that will apply to both people that don't have credit and people that do have credit that are first-time car loan buyers. Now, I have mentioned some of these in the video, but I just want to reiterate a few of them and then add some new pointers. Now, like I said throughout the video, typically they will expect money down, and that's just across the board. Certain situations you might not have to, but understand that you should probably budget that if you're planning on buying a car and you've never had a car loan before. Just at least put that aside. And I kind of mentioned that in my other video anyways, that it's good to have money down regardless. And then obviously they're going to expect just more stuff from you. Typically stuff like proof of income, proof of residency, all that kind of stuff, proof of employment even, just everything. You're going to have to do quite a bit more legwork just to get the loan done. So just understand that it might be a little bit difficult on that side of things, and it might take you a little bit longer. Now, I guess the biggest thing that I would say that applies to all of this, other than the stuff that I've already mentioned with like the mileage restriction, the year restriction, all that, is come into this with a mentality that you cannot be picky on the car. Now, I'm not saying that you should just buy any car that you see, or you should buy the first car that you see, or buy a piece of junk. What I am saying though is you need to be open-minded and not look at this first car purchase as like your only car purchase. I think that's a struggle with a lot of first-time buyers, and it's something that I personally struggled with as well. And it's coming into this and I'm going, okay, well, I'm spending X amount of dollars. I need to get the coolest car possible, whatever, because if I'm going to spend this money, it better be something that's worthwhile. And when you're someone who doesn't have any credit history at all, or you have very thin credit, you have to build it some way. And having an auto loan is one of the best ways to build your credit if you're smart about it. And so you just can't be picky. The analogy that I used to always use with customers is that this first auto loan is kind of like dating, right? You have to date a few people before you marry someone. Some people do end up marrying the first person that they date, but chances are that's not going to happen. You're going to have to date a few people, right? You're going to probably have to own a few cars before you find your dream car, or before you're able to afford your dream car. So you need to look at that from an auto loan perspective as well. They always say, what, you got to crash a few clunkers before you drive that Ferrari. You have to take out a few auto loans on cars that you might not love before you can get an auto loan on a car that you truly love. For me, this was buying a $20,000 car and taking out a loan of about 15 grand for it, showing a lender that I'm really good at paying that. I pretty much paid that off. And so then that showed lenders that I was committed to paying on loans. So then I was able to, in the next year, buy one of my dream cars, which was a Shelby GT350. And actually, months prior to that, I was able to lease a truck, which I'd always wanted a truck. And that was a 2018 Ram 1500. And so I went from being someone that had just basically a credit card as credit history to one auto loan. And that one auto loan, because I paid on it very well, and because it showed lenders that I was committed to it and came with a lot of money down, I then was able to get vehicles that I really love. So I had a vehicle that I liked, but I didn't love it, which then led me into getting vehicles that I really love. And obviously that's now led me to where I am now, where I can get a loan on a 2019 Ram Rebel, which I thought was the coolest truck ever. And now this 2020 Ford Raptor. And my situation is a little bit different now, where I don't get auto loans because I need the money from the lender. I get it so that I can invest my money. But again, that's a video for a whole nother topic. But just kind of, I hope that my progression with cars can show you guys that you need to just be open-minded to vehicles, and just understand that that's not your end-all be-all car, and you just need to be open to options. And maybe you're gonna have to drive a car that you don't really love for a year or two, and then you can get a car that you really love. That is going to sum up things for my video on first-time buyers and people that don't have any credit. If you guys have any questions, obviously leave that in the comment section below. And other than that, if you're stopping for the first time, please subscribe. I will see all of you in that next video.